Welcome to EPG Pathshala. We are going to be concerned here with the course on social policy. The module under discussion specifically is a social protection program based on cash transfers and direct transfer of benefits. My name is Sohini Sengupta. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Social Work at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai. One of the important causes of poverty in the society is variable and insufficient income. Cash transfer programs involve a transfer of a modest and reliable flow of income to individuals and households to reduce this variability. This protects the household consumption by enabling them to spend on essential requirements such as food, school, and healthcare in lean periods when they may not be obtaining the kind of incomes that they had believed they would. Cash transfers may also protect households from selling assets or falling into debt in difficult times. In the long run, cash transfer programs aim to enable households to build something that we have come across before, human capital. The objectives of this module is to enable students to understand why and how cash transfers serve as a social policy strategy. Students will also understand how cash transfer schemes fulfill social protection goals. We will look at important criticisms against cash transfer programs. We will also look at some specific cash transfer schemes and how they work in the context of India. We will look at how cash transfer schemes are related to this other new concept that has emerged, which is called the direct benefit transfer or DBT. What are cash transfers? Cash transfer programs involve modest and reliable flow of income to individuals and households to reduce income variability. In cash transfer programs, the government provides money rather than goods or services. Cash transfers are useful to address identified social risks and hardships such as, for example, support for the elderly or educational scholarship for children from disadvantaged situations. If you remember the module on labor standards and labor law, in which we discussed about large number of people being employed in the informal sector, one of the characteristics of people employed in the informal sector, including people who work in agriculture, is that there is no certainty as to the amount of income that they will have over any period of time. Cash transfer programs aim to target the most vulnerable segments of such population in order to enable them to reach, if not a decent standard of life, but at least specific contingencies in their life. What are the underlying assumptions of cash transfer programs? Cash transfer programs are underpinned by certain strong assumptions. Here, individuals take a central role and they are empowered to make effective use of resources transferred to them to improve their living standards, which essentially means when a government makes a modest transfer of cash income to individuals via social protection instruments like social assistance programs, they do it with the understanding that the individuals who receive this benefit are going to use it in a positive fashion. They're going to use it to improve their lives and basically not use it in some other types of wasteful consumption. This belief is absolutely central to the efficacy of cash transfer programs and their utility as a social protection instrument. If we do not consider individuals to be responsible enough to be able to use the cash transfers in ways which are beneficial to them and their households, the entire foundation of the program will fall through, because individuals may need cash for a variety of purposes. They may not necessarily want to use it in ways that the government wants them to use. It is believed that the cash transfers would reduce the cost barriers that prevent households from gaining access to essential services such as health and education. It can be problematic to assume that direct transfers, however, can be a substitute for improvement in basic services such as health and education. What this essentially means that although individuals can be responsible and one can assume that they will use the transfer made to them to access health and education services. But if the health and education service does not exist in the first place, then just transferring cash is not going to make health and education outcomes a reality. Cash transfer programs can be categorized into two main types: the conditional cash transfer programs and unconditional cash transfer programs. Conditional cash transfer programs, or CCT, is when cash transfers are made conditional on households meeting certain demands, such as children attending schools or ensuring institutional delivery of children, or ensuring that all the infants are immunized in a family. Second type of direct benefit transfer is the unconditional cash transfer, that is targeted towards households or individuals meeting a particular criteria that is universal in nature, such as, for example, households with no earning family members, or an elderly individual, or a person with particular forms of physical disability. What are the preconditions for the success of cash transfer programs? Like other social protection instruments, cash transfer and conditional cash transfer programs require some minimal preconditions for a successful outcome. These include suitable mechanisms to establish eligibility and identify eligible beneficiaries, as well as creating a mechanism to ensure that benefits are paid. Basically, if we are unable to identify the right kind of people, then the transferring the cash is not going to lead to overall reduction of poverty or overall creation of social protection in society. Similarly, if proper mechanisms are not created for people to be able to obtain these transfers smoothly and without any delays and inefficiencies, then the objective of the cash transfer program will be lost, because people will not get the cash in times of need, or they will not get it at all, or they will get it with frequent delays. A successful program would also require accountability mechanisms, including a monitoring and evaluation process, which is constantly trying to map whether the purpose or the goal for which the cash transfer was made in the first place is being met or not. Supporting cash transfers. Recent successes in cash transfer programs have actually come from Latin America. Programs such as the Bolsa Familia in Brazil and the Oportunidades program in Mexico must be viewed in the context where cash transfers have been supported by pre-existing public systems for delivering healthcare, nutrition, and education. Both Brazil and Mexico had school and educational and health facilities which enabled people to use the cash that they received to obtain these services. In the absence of good services, availability of cash will not enable people to obtain better living standards. Brazil's Bolsa Familia is based on minimum school attendance, and immunization of children is possible to implement only because there were sufficient number of schools of good quality that provided free education. Prior and continuous investment in good quality schools and teacher education is therefore necessary to make Bolsa Familia work. What this essentially means that programs that require compulsory attendance at health clinics, for example, require the existence of accessible and affordable healthcare services based on public health expenditure. So parallel investment and parallel work needs to be done to be able to provide good quality services in place. If these services and infrastructures are not in place, then cash transfer programs will not be supported and hence not work the way they're supposed to. How effective are cash transfer programs in meeting their broader social policy goals? Effective cash transfer programs fulfill the prevention, promotion, and transformation functions of social protection. It is supposed to reduce the vulnerability, that is, reduce the number of people who are falling into poverty, and prevent the people who are already poor to become even poorer. Further, it should reduce the chronic poverty by raising the incomes of the poor and improving their options for working their way out of poverty. So these preventive and promotive functions, if cash transfers are able to fulfill, we would consider them to be successful. Some proponents of cash transfer programs view universal unconditional cash transfers as a highly viable social policy that has the potential to reduce not only poverty but also the growing social inequality. Universal cash transfer programs, according to these commentators, would eliminate the problem of leakages and bureaucratic inefficiencies that plague other forms of social programs, especially transfers in kind. Cash transfers, therefore, have been promoted as an alternative to lumpy and inefficient social welfare administration, which are unable to extend social protection benefits to the people who actually need them. It is also believed that the availability of cash among the poor would increase the access and quality of public services, because people with money would there also seek out rationally the best services available for them. Sustainability. How do we make cash transfer programs sustainable? Because like all social protection programs, cash transfer programs also require a certain level of expenditure from private or other public or other sources in order for it to work. Sustainability of social protection programs are dependent on availability of sources of funding and the political will to create these sources. Governments may use various strategies to raise resources for financing cash transfer programs. This could include reallocation of funds within existing national budgets. The problem or the concern here is if funds are redirected from other programs which are considered to be less efficient social protection instruments into cash transfers, then it essentially does not mean increase in spending in social policy, but actually just redistributing the meager financing that is available to social protection in the first place. Governments may raise more revenue by increasing levels of taxation or economic growth. It may also obtain external assistance for cash transfer programs through loans and aids from external donors. Some of the criticisms of cash transfer programs: to be effective, cash transfers must be assured, easy to deliver, easy to monitor, and large enough to affect positive changes in the lives of people who obtain them. Therefore, conditional cash transfer programs may take up a very large chunk of public spending. But what forms of public expenditure would it replace? It is not considered to be a very effective strategy in times when prices of food and other essential commodities are increasing. Why do you think this is so? Because the amount of cash that is being transferred to a population, for it to make any difference, has to be sufficiently large. This might result in redirecting, as we have mentioned, public expenditure from other forms of social protection instruments. At the same time, rising price of food and other commodities would make that small transfer less and less efficient as time goes. So therefore, cash transfers also suffer from some of these inherent problems which we must factor in when we are looking at cash transfers as substituting and not complementing or supplementing other forms of social protection instruments. The other issue about the CCT programs have been the whole idea of replicability. While the first generation cash transfer programs have worked very well in Latin American countries, the one criticism is it possible to replicate this model in very different country context, despite the fact that it appears to be very standard and it appears to be very easy to implement everywhere. In many middle and low income countries, especially in rural areas, there are supply related problems such as not enough school, not enough classrooms, not enough teachers to provide the education. In such situations, would a model that worked in Brazil also work in, say, sub-Saharan Africa? Cash transfer programs can seldom make a dent in persistent poverty since it does not address the cause of poverty. So in basically it allows the poor people to make a certain number of purchases out of a small transfer, but it does not make any changes in their long-term condition unless of course it is supported and complemented by other forms of social protection measures. Let's take some examples of how cash transfers have been used as a social protection instrument in the context of India. Janani Suraksha Yojana, JSY, is a conditional cash transfer program. It's a health program introduced in 2005 under the National Health Mission and targets pregnant women to promote childbirth in hospitals. The scheme offers cash incentives to women for giving birth in public or accredited private hospitals. Special cash incentives are also provided to community health workers, the ASHAs, the accredited social health activists for promoting hospital birth. Based on the rate of institutional birth, Indian states are divided into low performing states, LPS, and high performing states, HPS. In 2012, 10 million women received cash transfers from the government under the JSY scheme. In 2014-2015, 10.4 million beneficiaries received cash transfers under JSY. This makes it one of the largest cash transfer programs in the world, not perhaps in terms of the amount of money it transfers, but in terms of the number of people who have received cash transfers. Janani Suraksha Yojana is an example of a conditional cash transfer program. Other examples of cash transfer programs is the National Social Assistance Program. This consists of 5 non-conditional cash transfer schemes, one for the elderly, the IGNO apps for widowed women, IGN WPS, disabled person, IGN DPS, and to families on the death of breadwinners, the NBS, through targeted non-conditional cash transfer programs, and Annapurna, which is an in-kind transfer of food grains to the poor elderly who are not covered by the no apps. Introduced in 1996, the objective of the NSAP is to protect poorer citizens from adverse effects of undeserved want resulting from unemployment, old age, disablement, breadwinner's death, maternity, and sickness. The difference between conditional cash transfer programs like the JSY and the National Social Assistance Program is that in case of the first, like in case of JSY, women are provided the transfers based on certain behavioral changes as far as health seeking is concerned. So the cash transfers are made only if the conditions associated with it are fulfilled. In case of unconditional cash transfers like the National Social Assistance Program, people only need to belong to a particular category and to be able to demonstrate a particular form of pre-identified vulnerability for them to become eligible for the cash transfer. In case of NSAP, there is no conditionality of where people would need to spend their money once the transfer is provided to them. Like in all cash transfer programs, individual agents are considered to be responsible enough to rationally use the money obtained to improve their living condition. Usually the sum of money is too small for people to make any big changes in their lives, and it usually supplements other forms of support or income even for the poorest. Let us now move on to a related concept, a similar concept called the direct transfer of benefits. The direct benefit transfer scheme in India was introduced in 2011-2012 financial year. Through this program, the government plans to transfer a large number of subsidies and other forms of cash assistance to people through their personal bank accounts. In 2013, the direct benefits transfer scheme was launched in 20 districts of the country and covered 7 welfare schemes. So far, the government has transferred the subsidy associated with kerosene, fertilizer, LPG, that's liquefied petroleum gas or cooking gas, as cash directly into beneficiaries' bank accounts. An example of a direct benefit transfer scheme is the PEHL scheme of the Government of India. In November 2015, the government launched the direct transfer of benefit for the LPG cooking gas subsidy under the PEHL scheme in 54 districts. The scheme was launched in the rest of the country in January 2015. The cooking gas subsidy was directly transferred into the bank account of beneficiaries, which essentially meant that when you purchase the cooking gas in the market, you pay the market price. But to eligible household, the difference in the subsidy and the market price would be transferred as cash as a subsidy benefit directly to their bank accounts. Instead of purchasing a subsidized gas cylinder by paying less, one pays the right price in the market and the subsidy is transferred as an additional benefit to people in their bank accounts. To obtain the subsidy, the consumer beneficiary has to fulfill a precondition. They have to link their Aadhaar number, which is a unique identity proof, in the LPG database with their bank account. Consumers joining the scheme are called CTC or cash transfer compliant. One of the main objectives of the scheme was to curb the diversion of subsidized LPG that cost at least 50% less than the market price and meant for domestic use for commercial purposes. By transferring the subsidy directly into people's bank account, the idea was to ensure that subsidized cooking gas was used only by those households for which the subsidy was meant, and not for commercial purposes, and not by other corrupt elements in the society. According to government sources, the scheme led to substantial annual savings of an estimated 22,000 crores from 2014 to 2016. The objective of direct benefit transfer, therefore, is to reduce corruption and also something called financial inclusion. The direct transfer of benefits is meant to curb people from misusing subsidies, and it's also meant to make social protection more efficient, more accountable, and better directed to those who are deemed eligible to receive those benefits. The added goal of the DBT program was financial inclusion. The DBT scheme is based on financial inclusion, and all beneficiaries would require access to bank accounts and unique identity proof. Money is transferred to bank accounts of beneficiaries who have an Aadhaar card. All citizens may obtain an Aadhaar card which carries a unique identification number based on demographic and biometric information. Once various types of subsidies and other welfare benefits are paid into the bank account, beneficiaries may utilize the cash to purchase goods and services from the market. It is argued that an Aadhaar-enabled bank account would enable the beneficiaries to receive multiple welfare payments at one point, and thus make the delivery of social protection programs or benefits more equitable and more efficient. Challenges. One of the key challenges in achieving direct transfer of benefits, or the broader goals of direct transfer of benefits, financial inclusion, increasing efficiency of social programs, and also reducing leakages and corruption, is the lack of access of poorer people to the banking services. Bank regulation and requirements must be considerably eased to enable poorer members of the society to be able to use their bank accounts for such purposes. Banking networks need to be sufficiently expanded in rural and remote areas for eligible beneficiaries to open, maintain, and use banking services for availing social welfare benefits. In the absence of good quality banking services and inability of people to use those services, and lacking in financial and legal literacy and other forms of problems such as high transportation costs to reach banks, inability to understand banking procedures, not receiving good treatment at the bank, might lead to cash transfers of benefits or subsidies eventually not reaching the people whom it is meant to protect in the first place. With this, we come to an end of of the module on cash transfer programs and direct transfer of benefits, let us reiterate some of the points that we made in this module. Cash transfers are an example of a social protection program that provides a transfer of cash income to people who are deemed to have a variable source of income, or who are deemed to be poor or marginal, who lack steady source of income because they either work in the unorganized sector, or they work in agriculture, or they suffer from various forms of social disadvantage. Cash transfer programs are different from other social protection strategies because they believe that individuals who receive the transfers would be able to obtain the specific services they require, whether be it education, health, or other forms of services, to improve their living standards directly from the market or from public provisions. There's an element of trust involved in doing cash transfer programs because you expect the beneficiaries to act as rational actors and use the cash provided to them to improve their conditions. The challenges of implementing cash transfer programs is if it is not complemented by infrastructure and services which people must be able to buy with the cash that is being transferred to them. In the absence of, say, for example, affordable healthcare or accessible healthcare, or teachers who teach in schools, it would be impossible for people who now have cash at their disposal to buy services where these services are non-existent. The other challenges of cash transfer program is the whole issue of redirection of government public expenditure from other forms of social program into cash transfer, because cash transfers may be quite expensive to implement. The advantages of cash transfer programs, as its proponents would have it, is creating a more efficient delivery and a more efficient targeting of benefits directly to the beneficiaries without the need of intermediaries such as bureaucracies or government officials or corrupt administration and so on and so forth. One of the related instruments of cash transfer program is a direct transfer of benefits, in which it's not just social protection and social program benefits which are transferred to the beneficiaries, but also various forms of subsidies that are provided by the government to targeted population groups. In future, it is felt that some of these subsidies would be converted into cash and be provided to people directly in their bank accounts. To access this form of subsidies converted into cash benefits, people would have to be able to own and operate and access their own bank accounts, which are made available and which are made operational through unique identity and numbers. It remains to be seen whether cash transfer and conditional cash transfer programs, which have been proved to have been quite successful in meeting some of the social policy goals in countries in Latin America and elsewhere in the world, would be successful when they are promoted in places like India. Some observers and commentators believe that cash transfer programs do have a place in the basket of other social protection mechanisms and schemes that any government would provide for its citizens. However, displacing all social programs with only cash transferred might be detrimental to the overall goal of social policy to create a more just and equitable society. Thank you very much for participating in this module.